You know that feeling when you have the perfect plan? Everything is laid out, it's clean, it's logical, it just makes sense. But what happens when that beautiful plan smacks right into the messy, complicated real world? Well, today we've got a great story about a supply chain team that had to learn this lesson the hard way. And what they built from the wreckage was so much stronger. Okay, so let's just get right to the heart of it with this quote because it says it all. The company was trying to run this really sophisticated system called just in time, or JIT. It's all about maximum efficiency. But they were doing it with purchase orders and spreadsheets. I mean, that's like trying to fly a fighter jet using the handlebars from a kid's bicycle. It's just not going to work. So what exactly is this pseudo-JIT system they were talking about? Well, think of it this way. You have the ambition of a high-tech, super-efficient system. It promises you agility, low inventory, all the good stuff. But the reality, the thing actually running the show, is Excel. And that means you're trading that promise of efficiency for endless manual work. You're swapping visibility for all sorts of hidden risks. It's a system that looks good on the surface, but underneath, it's an accident waiting to happen. So, to fix this mess, a team came forward with a really bold and, honestly, a very logical plan. It looked perfect. But then, a critique landed like a bombshell. It basically revealed that this perfect plan was fundamentally flawed and almost guaranteed to fail. This is the story of that plan, that critique, and the much, much smarter strategy that was born from that conflict. All right, let's start with part one, the vision. This was the team's original big idea. They wanted to go from total chaos to absolute control. Here's what they came up with. So they correctly identified some huge problems. First, this massive legal and financial risk. Nobody actually knew who was responsible for the inventory at any given time. Ouch. Then you had a data nightmare. You know how it is with Excel? Changes were being made constantly with zero history, zero control. On top of that, every department had its own format, and the whole thing depended on a few spreadsheet gurus who were the only ones who knew how it all worked. Talk about a house of cards. And their proposed solution? Man, it looked beautiful on a slide. A totally clean, automated, linear process. The main system, the MRP, would figure out what's needed, automatically generate an order, and then, this is key, it would lock in what's called a firm zone. That's basically a promise to the supplier saying, we are definitely buying this, we won't change our minds. Then that gets published to a supplier portal. The suppliers ship the goods and send back a digital heads up. The ultimate goal? To completely, totally eliminate Excel from the process. It was a vision of absolute order. But here comes the reality check. Because the plan was logical, it was clean, and as this critique pointed out, it was also deeply flawed. It had completely ignored the messy realities of law, of strategy, and frankly, of human beings. And this critique did not pull any punches. It came right out and said it. This wasn't an objective analysis. It was a document written to justify a conclusion they had already made. They'd fallen in love with their shiny new system before they had truly dug in and understood the problem they were trying to solve. The first major hole the critique poked in the plan was a big one. It was all about that legal framework. Was the company's biggest financial risk, all that inventory liability, actually covered by this new perfect system? Turns out the plan had a giant legal blind spot. For instance, in Japan, there are specific laws to protect smaller suppliers. The plan completely ignored them. They also hadn't really defined the basic legal details of who owns what and when. So this whole idea of a firm zone, the core of their plan, was basically built on legal quicksand. Okay, next question from the critique. Was the plan strategy for actually managing all the different materials and parts smart enough for the real world? You see, the proposal had this very simple model. Just classify parts as high, medium, or low rotation. But that's way too simple, right? Think about it. What if you have a part that's low rotation, you don't use it often, but it's a critical electronic component you can only get from one supplier and it has a 6-month lead time? That's a huge risk. The critique pushed for a much more robust model, something like the Kraljic matrix, which forces you to think strategically. You have to weigh a part's value against its supply risk. That way, you're managing what's important, not just what's moving fast. And finally, the critique went after the very heart of the plan's vision. This big dream of completely eliminating Excel, was that even realistic? The proposal treated this huge change like it was just a technical switch you could flip. It totally underestimated the human side of things, like how hard it would be to get hundreds of suppliers, especially small businesses, to use a new portal. And it dismissed departmental resistance as just some minor risk. Let's be real. In a project like this, human resistance isn't a minor risk. It is the risk. It's the biggest hurdle you're going to face, and the plan had no real strategy for it. Now, this is the point in the story where most big projects just die. The team gets defensive, the critique gets ignored, and nothing changes. But this team did something pretty remarkable. They took that tough feedback, they embraced it, and they used it to forge a strategy that was smarter, tougher, and in the end, actually had a chance to succeed. And this slide shows the fundamental shift in their thinking. The goal was no longer eliminate Excel at all costs. The new, much smarter goal was to step back and ask, why are people using it in the first place? They realized they needed to respect the rationality of the old tool, its flexibility, and then build a system that kept the good stuff while adding the control and scalability the business desperately needed. So here's the new, smarter path forward. Instead of a risky, all-at-once, big bang launch, they broke it down into these common-sense phases. And notice the most important part, phase 0. Before they even thought about building the system, they committed to visualizing what was actually happening, and, this is huge, to actually go out and listen to their suppliers. Genius! This table just captures the whole evolution perfectly. Take the risk of departmental resistance. The first plan just had this vague idea of early involvement. The new strategy? A full-blown change management plan that starts with that phase 0 listening tour. And look at legal issues. In the first plan, it wasn't even on the radar, not addressed. In the new plan, it's a mandatory first step before anything else gets designed. That right there is the difference between a fantasy and a real strategy. So, what's the real work of transformation all about? Let's boil that all down to the key lessons we can take away from this team's incredible journey. You know, this final quote really says it all, doesn't it? The real transformation wasn't about getting new software. It was about evolving from a chaotic, informal, Excel-based system to one built on clear, controlled, and legally sound contracts. They went from playing at JIT to actually doing it for real. So, if you're working on any kind of big change project, here are the lessons from this story. First, get absolute clarity on the rules, especially when it comes to money and law. Second, be realistic. Your strategy has to be tough enough for the messy real world. Third, have some empathy. Don't just trash the old tools. Understand why people were using them. And finally, you've got to have partnership with your suppliers and a whole lot of patience with your rollout. And that brings us all the way back to the beginning, the perfect plan. It is so easy to fall in love with our own clever solutions. But the big lesson here is that the most valuable person in the room is often the one who asks the hardest questions. So I'll leave you with this to think about. Who is giving your perfect plan its reality check?